Yeah, what's cracking, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Prison Break Raw. I'm your host, the one and only Big JD. Criminal organizations, let's say, for example, the Mafia, maybe even the Yakuza, cartels, the Irish mob, the Russian mob, even the Jewish mob, street gangs, if of course they have half-ass intelligence and are about their money, they're going to want to find one of their own with a clean slate, a clear record, and they're going to put them into the police department. Hopefully they're going to shoot for the narcotics unit. They're going to put them in the sheriff's department. You name it, sky's the limit. They may even try to put them into the feds. Why? You don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure that one out. Because it benefits the organization. You have eyes and ears on the inside. What's to stop that from actually crossing over into the prison system? I mean, shit, they did it with the military, right? Several different street gangs, even organizations of various kinds, will put some of their own, or some of their own will volunteer to go into the military, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, whatever it is. I've talked to vets that said that in certain Army barracks, military barracks in general, they've seen graffiti to different neighborhoods. Back in Germany, when the U.S. was stationed there, before the Berlin Wall came down, they actually found like Crips and Bloods have hit up on the Berlin Wall before they pulled it down. And many of the local people said it was military personnel that did it. But making one a CO, is that possible? Why would you believe that that would be off the table? So if you had a homie from your neighborhood, you're in the prison system, you come up with a brilliant idea, we could make our stay here a whole lot better if we just had one of our own that we know that we could trust on the inside, not somebody that you pay off, but one of your own, actually, on the inside. If you've ever seen the movie The Departed, you would have seen that Jack Nicholson, who was supposed to be portraying Whitey Bulger for that, had Matt Damon in the police department. He was his eyes and ears on the inside. Everything that was going on, Jack knew about it. Let me tell you a little story about a guy that I met from my car, Sureño, who came up into the federal system. Not going to put his name out there. We're just going to call him Mr. J for the purposes of this video. He was from Gillette, Wyoming. As a young kid, impressionable. Looked up to his older big homies as role models. He idolized them. He wanted to walk in their footsteps, be just like them. That was his mindset. But he had no record. None whatsoever. So his older homies came up with a brilliant idea. We're going to make Mr. J a CO so that he could bring us in shit. He could take care of us. He can let us know who the rats are, who's doing what, who's where, and how is it going on. But most importantly, bringing us in all the shit that we need. Anything and everything that you may think of. I don't really know if he was bringing in phones, but he's damn sure bringing in quite a lot of drugs. So that's what he did. He followed the direction and the orders of his older homies from his neighborhood. And he did that. He became that CO. Until eventually somebody snitched on him. He got brought up on charges and he ended up doing time himself. So a gang member became a CO only to become a convicted felon and end up in the system. Why is this any kind of a big deal, you may ask? Well, to somebody like me who was raised from a different school, people that were actually real convicts, real gangsters on the streets, those kind of people that raised me, recognizes this kind of game. But a lot of this new generation, this skinny pants saying the N-word type of fucking weird generation, and I'm not trying to sound like grandpa here on the front lawn, but there's a lot of cats that are in their 20s and in their 30s that didn't have that guidance in their lives or that kind of street game instilled into them because everybody was in prison by that time, by the time they were coming up in the system. So now when they're in the system themselves, they see only a CO. There's no gray area. There's no logical understanding to what is going on and why this happened. So they look at him as a cop. They don't want nothing to do with him. They talk bad behind his back. They try to pressure other people into stabbing him and getting rid of him, yet they won't do it themselves. Then you get people from other cars coming at you. But there was a few of us that knew why he did what he did, Mr. J, when he showed up on the yard over there at the FCI. When it was explained to me, it made perfect sense. And people were like, but he's a CO, he's a cop. No, he's not. He didn't get up in there for the benefit of law enforcement. He got up in there for the benefit of his homies. If you were smart and you were in the streets and you were about that life, you're going to want to get one of your little homies to do it, or maybe one of your little homegirls to do it. I mean, shit, they use hyenas all the time to set fools up. Does it make sense to you? It makes perfect sense to me. But I had a white dude from the same state of Wyoming trying to low-key, passive-aggressively smutting up this dude saying, oh, you know, how come you guys why would you guys let a CO in there? And I said, do you even know the man's story? Well, no. Well, I'm not going to explain it to you because it really ain't none of your business, and it really ain't none of your business to even be speaking about the homie like that anyhow. He stuck around the yard, but there was a couple of cats that always had something bad to say about him until finally the man in charge, the Llavero, said, if you don't like him, go handle that business. Well, of course, they didn't want to handle that business. To make a long story short, there was a dispute on the softball field. The homies had a team. And one of the white dudes that were from, who knows what state, called him a cop. Mr. J right off the bat reacted and took flight on that dude and kicked it off. Bunch of people got removed and shipped out to other various places. By the time he touched down in, I believe, Lompoc, and he was up front with it, and he explained the situation, he had the paperwork, all the stuff, whatever it would take to explain to people what went down, what it was really all about. A lot of these cats, they're not convicts. They're not gangsters, they're not nothing. They're just street thugs. I mean, look at their idols. People in the hip-hop music business these days. These are a lot of these fools' models nowadays. They're role models. So they don't really know nothing. They can't think outside the box. So they took flight on him. They sent a couple of people in there to tune him up. He tuned them up. Sent a couple other people in there to tune him up. He tuned them up again. But this time he had bumps and bruises and they shot him out of there. He kept his mouth shut. He didn't say nothing to nobody about anything. Finally ends up in Yazoo City. This time you got a big bad big homie in there. That's a tyrant. That's all about himself. That don't care about nobody else. Sent some dummy on a crash mission to book his ass, to shank him. So finally, that was the end of Mr. J being shanked somewhere. Where he's at right now, I have no idea. But let me tell you something about this gentleman right here. He kept his mouth shut. He never snitched on nobody. When he was in there doing the work for his big homies, as eyes and ears on the inside, he never harassed any other races. He never issued out no disciplinary reports. If he did toss up somebody's cell, he never took nothing. He had one purpose and one purpose only. So why would this be a big deal? But like I said, it's the lack of real street knowledge. It's the lack of being a real gangster, the lack of being a real convict in the minds of a lot of this generation that I'm talking about. So they can't see the obvious of what it was all about. You can't look at a man like this as a CO. You can't look at a man like this as a cop. They're a mole. They're a plant, a spy. That would be like in the old days of the Cold War if the Soviet Union moved the whole family in here like on that show, The Americans. They lived as Americans. They joined the military, whatever it is, joined the government. That don't mean that they're really Americans. They're moles. They're spies. But all in all, this dude was just like a regular, average, everyday homie. Big dude, too. He had hands. He could use them. And he had balls, and he wasn't going to run off the yard, and he never ran off the yard all the way to the end. And he kept his mouth shut. He's more of a real gangster than a lot of people that I've met in that federal system. He's more of a stand-up dude than a lot of them that I met as well. When it came down to it on the softball field, there were people that were so-called tough guys, Billy Badasses with all their tattoos and their muscles on the weight pile every day. For some reason, didn't even see the shit that was going on the softball field. One of two things that tells me. Number one, they didn't want to be a part of that. Or number two, they are completely unaware of their surroundings, which makes them a crash dummy. But this shit happens. And if you're in this game, you're going to want to do something like this. You're going to want to have one of your people get on the inside. Why wouldn't you? Why would you want to be totally blind? As a person, that fool was always there for us. He was always out on that yard. But to call him a CO, to call him a cop, or the equivalent of a rat or the equivalent of a piece of shit, because he did that for the benefit of his older homies, it's pretty out of pocket if you think about it. With the way that I'm explaining it to you, what do you think? Because I could think of a whole lot worse scenarios that a homie could have put himself in or fucked up in some way, shape, or form. How about when you got a bunch of homies that decide that they're going to gangbang some broad into the neighborhood? Everybody fucks her, whether she likes it or not. Little Hoochie shows up at the party, gets a little too drunk, all the homies are taking advantage of her. In my mind, I'm looking at those kind of people as being way worse. But yet they're all over the system. It don't matter if they've been charged with it or not. How about the person that does the drive-by shooting? Every man, woman, and child that's in the vicinity of some jackass that doesn't know how to handle a firearm could be a potential victim. To me, that's worse. How about the dude that's running around all knotted out, all doped up? Got 150 debts all around him. He looks the role. He fits the optics with the tattoos and all that shit. But to me, he's just a weak individual. But for a man like Mr. J to put on that badge, to go through all that training, to slip into the inside, into the belly of the beast as the beast master, that takes some fucking balls, man. That takes some real balls. I've always had nothing but respect, love and respect for Mr. J, and I hope to see him again one day, whenever he gets out, because he got involved in a conspiracy charge. Right? All these big badass tough guy gangsters, with the tattoos and all the muscles, that talk all that high-powered shit, had actually testified against him and got him caught up in a conspiracy, and he got several years in the feds. That's how I met him. He also did some time in his own state facility after, they found out that he was a dirty CO. Another one of these Billy Badass with the tattoos tough guys that were in another car, another race, had dropped dime on him as a dirty cop. There's a lot of moving parts and components to this game, this street game, that you have to totally understand. Or else you're never going to make it. You're not going to live to see 47 like me or anybody else. A lot of these dudes that got so much shit to say about somebody like Mr. J, guess what? At least two of these individuals that I know of that had nothing but horrible things to say about the man, that were always pushing people into wanting to deal with this man, two of them ended up going out backwards. Yeah. And if you were to take a look at these two individuals, you would see the optics have been met and approved. Wow, man, look at this guy's tattoos. He must be a real convict. Weenies. Like I said, man, you just never know. People underestimate people all the time. People assume shit. People put jackets and labels on people that they don't deserve to have on them. Mr. J was a real one. And what he did, it took a lot of balls. When you're in that game, you got to be unorthodox. You got to think outside the box. You got to be smart. You got to be like 10 steps ahead of everything. Because it's you and your little sack of dope versus a law enforcement apparatus that has billions of dollars at its disposal. If you don't have that little bit of extra edge on your side, you're fucked. I commend anybody that would do something like that, even though I'm not in all of that shit no more. I'm out of that whole street game. But speaking for somebody that is, being somebody that I was at one time, I could tell you it makes perfect sense. And if that fool gets exposed, if he gets caught, he ends up wearing the same uniform inside that I did. He switches out. They pull the badge off him. He's a homie. We're going to ride together, and nobody's going to say nothing bad about him. And if anybody does got an issue, then you're going to have to bring it to him. Don't start with all the chisme, all the gossip behind everybody, behind his back to everybody else. But like I said, this is what it is, man. There's so many different aspects to this street life that you may never even know happens. Pretty much like alliances and stuff for different beneficial purposes, whatnot, you would never expect it to happen. All these things. Dirty cops, corrupt politicians. The sky's the limit. I'll tip my hat to somebody like Mr. J every day of the week that did that, because it takes balls. That's pretty much what it is, man. You already know what it is. You heard it right here. Prison Break Raw, uncut, uncensored, no holds barred, non-sugarcoat, not politically correct, all up in your face, slapping you with that dick of reality. And I'm out.